would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Pearson. I'm a filmmaker and writer, community worker. So I do a lot of stuff that's like community art stuff. So working with film, with community groups and things like that. But on a personal level, I'm a story writer.
Brilliant. I mean, I met you in, 2015, about then?
Yeah, I think I probably met you before the screening. We'd met before then, so the film would have been 2016. 2016. So yeah, like 2015, 2014, around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good time. Good long time. And it was a good time as well.
It was a good time as well. It's the best of times. But yeah, and I always remember you being this you brought people together really well, and it was, you really could see that your connection with the community was really strong. So I've always admired that about you. What did you do before I met you? Had you been making films before 2015?
Firstly, I want to know that it feels very conceited for you to say nice things and me go, yes, I do all of those things.
True.
What the most accurate description of me ever. I think, I'm a working class lad, so I came from poor beginnings of doing just regular jobs, working in bars. did painting and decorating for a while, so I did those kinds of things, and then always loved film, always wanted to write stuff, and got an opportunity to go to university. So I went to university in 2006, I think it was. So I was the old guy on campus, did that stuff. That was really a great experience because it gave me 3 years to fully be creative and work on stuff. And then from that, I came out of uni, did some other odd jobs, and then started working at Tape, doing community-based filmmaking. So that was working with groups of people. It's hard to be. It's when people say diversity, they think of diversity being the thing of you work with a group of people with Down syndrome. Oh, you work with a group of people who've got X, Y, and Z. Whereas when we worked at Tape, diversity meant come to the group. It doesn't matter what your label society wants to put on you. You're here to be creative. So it meant that the groups I was working with could be, somebody's got Down syndrome, somebody's a recovering drug addict, some people are older, some people are younger. I don't want to. Labels are terrible, and I don't like giving people labels. And we didn't ever label anybody at Tape. You just came. If you felt like you needed to tell us something for our information, you would tell us, but we never asked those questions. You were there to write, you were there to make a film. And that was my first kind of introduction to collaborative working with people who have not got any kind of background in those things. That was great. It was fun. It was real. I started working at Tape because I had, I got a degree in filmmaking and wanted to do filmmaking. I love community stuff. I'm quite a left-leaning person, and I like, doing things with charities has always been something that I think is cool. But I didn't go into it because I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be great to work with the community? I'm like, hey, I'm a filmmaker. This is filmmaking. But once I got in there, I was like, this is ace. This is like everything I learned about being creative is somewhat wrong. My understanding of being creative was, I am a struggling writer and I'm going to sit in a dark room and lock myself away and no one will ever, and I'll be very moody and smoke cigarettes even though I don't smoke. And then I'm working in a group with people who, one person's a big fan of Truffaut and then the other person's favorite thing is Dad's Army, and you're like, okay, well, how does this work? And the answer is brilliantly, because you have these opposite kind of opinions of taste, and being able to mold that and not allow the person who's really into their art stuff to be dismissive to somebody who likes more kind of general entertainment, and then also lifting that person who likes general entertainment and pointing out what's great about those things. Because that thing where it's easy to be oh, this is a piece of art and this is just kind of mainstream junk. And it's well, no, but look at these, look at Dad's Army. The character development in that is beautiful, and the characters are beautiful. And actually, it's not really about the war. It's not really about the hijinks. It's about you wanting to spend time with those people. That's great learning of writing and character building. And so I think it was a great thing to be a part of and to see, but it was education for me. It was education of like, oh, I think being a lonely writer sometimes locks you into bad technique and not thinking out of the box, because that's the problem with being a writer, is that you are the master of your own domain and you get to like make all the rules and no one gets to say anything. But that makes you a bad writer because you're not challenging yourself. You're not going, does that work? Does that make sense? It all makes sense in your head because it's come out of your head. But working in those groups with really differing opinions and working how to navigate that made me navigate it in my own work as well.
Yeah, because I mainly interview painters, there is a bit of an expression which is painting's your handwriting. And if you are, there was something which a painting tutor taught me in an art school, and he said, it was a little story. He said, you're going out to work and you've got plenty of time, and you write a note for the milkman saying, 2 pints of semi-skimmed, and you leave it on the door, and he brings it back. The next day, you're late or the next week, you're late for work, you write the same note, but it's really scribbled because you're late for work, you're panicking. And he said that translates to painting. If you've not got much time, your brush strokes will be rushed. That's not a bad thing. You want that emotion in there, but you want it to contrast with the smoother, more elegant time and consideration. Does that relate? Because I imagine there's a similar thing with writing where if you're in a certain frame of mind and you've had a bad bus journey and you get home and you think, I've got to write something, you're like, well, this person doing it, and you're kind of typing away does your frame of mind travel through writing? Have you ever felt that where you go, I've had such a great day, this writing now is pacing, which is different than what I do in this other frame of mind?
There is truth to that. I think there's negatives and positives to the way that day-to-day stuff can affect your writing. Firstly, this sounds like I'm not answering your question, but firstly, I've recently been talking to me about there's this person who's trying to ask for my help with writing at the moment, and they keep telling me like, oh, they've got to be in the mood. And I'm like, well, the trick is that you don't have to be in the mood. The problem is that if you're a creative person, as soon as you start, you will start writing something, and it's always better to sit and write something than not write something. You can always fix something you've written, but you can't fix something you haven't written. So mood's a weird one, because I'm guilty of that. I'm definitely guilty of going, not today, I'm not feeling it. I've got to feel the muse before I can write, and it's nonsense. Every time I put pen to paper, I just start writing and it's fine. But it's that initial blank page of like, I've got to get the paper out and write. When it comes to your daily mood, it can have positives and negatives. Like, unless you're really, really honed with it, you were like, I had a really bad argument. And in chapter 6, I'm in arguing with the character. Let's get into chapter 6 and write that really angry chapter. Something bad or something good happening to you in real life, and then you pouring it into whatever part of the book you're working on might be negative or positive. Because if it's like, this is supposed to be a chapter that's actually about a character learning something really positive, but you've just walked home in the pissing rain and you're really grumpy, and so you write a really grumpy chapter, is not great. That said, writing is always better than not writing, so you can always fix it if tonally it's not right. I do find sometimes I can get coloured by. I try when I am writing, I try not to watch too many things that are the same. So like, I remember like when I first. So I'd always written scripts. I'd never written a novel. And when I first decided to write British Winters and write a novel, I was in the process of rewatching all the Blackadders. And I realised that the humour was very Blackadder. Like, not intentionally, I wasn't doing it, but I kept doing, especially like Blackadder Goes Forth, where a lot of it's like puns and like sticky bun, sticky the sticking on a sticky bun. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm writing Blackadder, and I've got to stop that. So I have to be careful that when I'm writing, I'm not like obsessively watching one part medium, like, because that's, I think you click into humour, especially humour is worse than anything else. But like, if you suddenly start watching, I don't know, the English Office or something like that, and all of a sudden you get really dark with your humour, like, it's because I'm watching too much of The Office. So those things can bleed, and I don't like that. I never really thought about I guess. It would. I think if something was annoying me, I wouldn't go to writing. I don't think I've ever written angry. Have you written angry?
I've written embarrassed, and I want to tell this story because I've been talking to you about a script I'm developing.
Yeah.
The bit which you haven't seen, it was on my iPad. I had to work in, well, not had to, I was privileged enough to work in Finner Park for 4 days whilst the owners were away. And it was just me and the other kind of gallery assistant. And it would be quite quiet. You know, even if there were 20 people in that day, which is great for a gallery, it's 20 people in a whole day is not a lot for people to see. So I would have the iPad up and I'd be typing away. And I'd be typing in someone else's voice. And I wanted to type something which was embarrassing and, what's the word, a little bit salacious and kind of, you know, youthful. It's not my voice at all. And I'm typing it and it gets a bit graphic in parts. And no one can see me. There's a wall behind me. There's no person who can come in and look. Yeah. But I started to get very embarrassed, especially because of the setting which I was writing it in. Whereas when I write at home, I'm just tunnel vision, just writing and discovering things as I write it, which I quite enjoy. But writing now is very self-conscious, thinking, I know what I'm trying to achieve is a social media kind of thing that's happening. And I want to try and frame it so that this person's personality is now being kind of almost funneled towards this trap of being caught on camera saying inappropriate things. But writing that made me feel a bit vulnerable, you know, writing it because of where I was. So, and I suppose otherwise I did force myself to write every day for a few days because I wanted a scene to be written, which is the 6 pages that I have been talking to you about. And that force wasn't, I don't want to write it. It was, I have to write a page every day for these 6 days because I want this to happen. And that would be interesting because I'd just say, I just have to write. So what am I trying to get done? And then start writing and figure out what's happening. I'd like to do more of that. The first part of the script that I've written was more trying to understand what I'm writing as I'm writing it. Because I'd kind of venture into it thinking, I suppose I can see this starting, this happening, this developing, and then get into that sticky point of this now has to be someone's voice who I can't speak in, and I'm relying on this person to do it. Now, I've spoken to the actor who I'm hoping to do it. They're all over it. They love it. That is kind of their voice. So that's my experience of that. Have you ever experienced something where you go, this isn't my voice, and this isn't comfortable dialogue, or this isn't, you know, friendly dialogue, or this isn't an emotion that I love living in, but it has to come out?
That's really interesting. I think most of my imagination works. I've got lots of voices in my head, I guess. I think when I meet people, they kind of like slip in there, and I go, okay, I kind of feel that vibe. Sometimes it's like, you know, interviews I've seen with people, and they'll drop in my head. What you were saying before about trying to work out what your script is by that first page, I definitely feel like, so I'm writing a fantasy at the moment, that when I write something, I feel like I'm really bad. Who's Magellan? Something like that. I'm going to uncharted areas, and I'm just the first person to experience it. So I don't really feel like I'm writing something. I feel like I'm experiencing something. That sounds really pretentious and annoying, but like that is genuinely how I write something. So the characters tend to show themselves to me rather than me go, you know, like, so like within British Winters, you've got these two characters. You've got character Noel, the main character, and one of his best friends, a guy called Nails. Nails grew from how Noel would interact with him, and then I was like, well, how is he interacting? And it's almost like it's like they are, each character is this weird kind of amorphous energy, and as they talk, they start becoming these 3-dimensional characters in front of me. Yeah, I think I've got a very voyeuristic writing style where it's me. I think I live my life very people-watchy and stuff, and so when I'm writing characters, it's the same way as when you meet somebody. You don't know who they are, and you meet them, and you go like, oh, bit right-wing, it turns out. You know, like you kind of, I think it's something where you kind of, so that's how I find characters. I'm like, it's weird because with British Winters, the main character is the narrator, and then 2 of the other things I'm writing at the moment, the narrator is the narrator, which is unusual for me. And it's a strange thing because I always think, well, who the hell's the narrator? Who's this person who's just chatting away about stuff happening in this world? But when the narrator is the main character, like when it was British Winston, it was Noel. It was just Noel was walking up to people, and even if he knew them before that part of the book, when I was writing it, it was like, hey, who are you? Oh, what are your opinions on this? And that's how I was writing those characters. I never really thought about when I write those characters. Oh God, it's really interesting what you say, because now my brain's trying to work out how I'm doing that. Because I don't ever think I'm not writing in my voice, because I don't think any of them are my voice. They're all somebody else. Like, obviously, I think Noel has a lot of similarities with mannerisms and stuff. But like, yeah, it's weird because I don't feel like I'm putting on a voice either. I'm like, oh, it's a, I always say that thing that, like, I always struggle with audiobooks because it's always like written 90% of the time, it's a bloke reading it, and then it'll be like a woman will talk and I'll go, oh, hello, blah, blah. You're like, oh, are you doing a weird woman voice? So I don't put on voices. And it's a very interesting thing because I genuinely never thought about how do I do those bits, but I just kind of guess none of them are me. So why would any of them be different than me? It's very interesting. I've got another book that I started writing, and I know there's a bit in it with this animal. I don't want to say torture, but animals get hurt in it. I'm a big animal person. I love animals, and I know what the scene is. I know what's going to happen to the dog. I know what's going to happen to the dog afterwards, and it's horrendous to me. And I'm like, how am I going? This might be the hardest thing I've ever written, because I'm not writing a character who's like, I don't like writing cartoon character bad people. Like, you're a bad person. They're evil in every way. I like them to have nuance. I like to have a reason. So the character that does this horrible thing isn't a person who's a horrible person. It's kind of like, do you remember the story in the news of the cat in a bin lady?
No, I thought that's what you were going to...
Yeah. So that it kind of comes from there, because I don't think that person was a bad person trying to do a mean thing to a cat. I think it was just somebody who had a moment of just craziness and did something stupid and then didn't know how to react to it afterwards. I always put it akin to that when you're on top of a...
It's a lack of impulse control, isn't it? It's a weird,
Well, everyone knows the experience of being on top of a tall building and then for a second go jump.
Yeah.
And you're, oh, why did I think that? That's a horrible thought. And I think that every time you see something crazy on the internet, it's somebody who just had that. I don't think all the way through their lives they're like that. I just think that person who just jumped. And then you go, well, how do you deal with after jumping? And so, yeah, I think that the catalyst for that kind of is a little bit of, if it's not a bad person, but they do something that everyone would see as bad, how do you empathize with that person? But so that just with you saying writing a character that isn't you, that's probably the furthest away from me possible. But again, I just think I just see it in a voyeuristic way. It's not me doing these things, even though it's my brain coming up with horrific things that will keep people awake at night. But I think it's I'd love to. I've not really ever sat down with somebody who's written a book, or I've got a few people who write, but I don't think they would say they are writers. They're just people who, technically I would say if you write, you're a writer. It doesn't matter. There's like people who like have written these amazing books and they've written one and never written ever again, but they get to be called writers because they've written one book. If you're writing all the time, then you're a writer. But I've not ever had a sit down with somebody who would define themselves as a writer. And I'd be really curious of what their process is and how far it is removed from me. Because you think of someone like Tolkien, that's someone who's fascinated by, folklore and mythology and history and all of those things. And he writes in a very meticulous way. But I wonder how it's always that famous thing of The Hobbit starting with him marking papers, and he wrote, in a hole lived a hobbit, in a hobbit hole lived a hobbit, or something like that. And that was the first part of it. He just wrote the word hobbit, and that started the whole of Lord of the Rings. So in that moment, that was just creative, that was just flow of consciousness. But I can't mention that he wrote flow of consciousness. I felt like he would have written quite structured. He's like a professor of English. Was he a professor of English? Was he a professor of history?
I don't know enough to...
Yeah, so whatever, he was a professor of something.
It will be on screen now,
yeah.
saying what he is.
So I would imagine he would write very differently. But yeah, it's interesting. I do like. That sounds a bit egotistical, but I do really enjoy when someone asks me a question like that, because my brain goes, "Oh yeah, I do this kind of like without thought." Like that part that I don't think. I was mentioning before about my wife asking me about how I when I'm. It is a fantasy, so I'm describing like cities that don't exist and explaining. And she's like, "How do you do it?" And it's like, well, I kind of just imagine I'm there, and then I'm looking up. What does it mean? You know, and then my brain goes. My brain is like, open the door. What do I see? And then what does that mean? Like, as in, if your city, you decide to make your main city made of red bricks, what does it mean? Why is it made of red bricks? Where did the bricks come from? Why did the king decide that he wanted red bricks for his castle, or what? You know, like it's a thing where everything is like, open your eyes, what do I see? And then the honing it down is like, what does it mean? How does it affect the story? Does it affect the story? Yeah, I guess it's weird because I think of like Jack Kerouac is referred to as like a stream of consciousness writer, and it's famous that he wrote on the road on one piece of paper, well, lots of paper stuck together. Yeah. And I always thought that's the best way to describe me, was stream of consciousness. But I think maybe voyeuristic writer is the best way, is that I'm just, somebody else wrote these books. I just get to look at them through a little screen and looking at somebody else's stories. Yeah, you know, like it's definitely, I think I mentioned the last one, that I always saw it as like, you write like a river, a running river, and then you go back and you kind of put in the dams and the weirs to kind of make it make sense. Because I'm not Kerouac. I'm not just banging it out and then going and publish. I'm definitely going back and changing stuff, and I definitely put a lot more thought into it at that point. And actually, a good example. I feel weird talking about something that's not finished, because try not to tell anybody anything, because it's not finished yet, so I don't want to tell anybody storylines. But there was a character that's the main villain of this fantasy, and I wrote a chapter where he does this kind of like, it's not the same, but if you ever watch The Thick of It, the first episode of The Thick of It has this amazing. Just watch the first opening scene, because one of the cleverest scenes, because the scene is Tucker coming in, and he's telling this minister that it's wrong what's happening to him. Press are bastards. The PM's right behind you, and he's like, that's good to hear. And the whole thing unfolds, and eventually he's basically making the guy sign his resignation. And it's just this amazing thing going, and then that's why it's sad that we've got to let you go. And he's like, what? I'm not going anywhere. And he's like, with what they're saying, there's not us doing it, she doing it. And eventually this guy has basically resigns. And it's just this amazing bit. It kind of was based on that a little bit, the idea of like, two people having a conversation that one person isn't really privy to where the conversation is going, the other person really knows. And then as I was writing other scenes, I realized that the whole point of this villain is I didn't want them to be this person of power. I wanted them to be an admin person. And so really they're not evil in a traditional way of like, I'm in charge and I'm going to do stuff. It's more like clandestine kind of, not clandestine, why can't I think of the term, the guy who's like the backstabbing, there's a term for when people are backstab. I don't know, duplicitous, I'm trying to think. Duplicit. No, it's based on a person, but I can't think of what it is. Machiavellian. It's very Machiavellian. I'll just pause as if I knew that all along. Like that Machiavellian kind of like behind the shadows, pulling the strings, those kinds of things. But then when I was rewriting it, I suddenly was like so the stream of consciousness was this scene playing out where he basically takes his boss's job based on paperwork. He like says, and the boss is like, what are you doing in my chair? And blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that I didn't want that main character to even be at that level. I wanted them to be like someone's PA. I wanted them to be so nondescript and no one would think he could do anything. But he's seeing how the world works. He comes from poor background, but he doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't want to like say, oh, I've come from rags to riches. He just wants to have power and control, but he has none. And so I had to rewrite that scene. It was quite interesting to go, well, what if So I create a new character for this. So the scene still plays out the same way, but it's a brand new character has that scene. And this Fitch, who is this main villain, is just getting to watch this. There's just a person who's got the coffee for the meeting, and it's this whole thing. So yeah, so in some respects, I wrote that in a voyeuristic, what is happening in the scene, and then I ironically then changed the main villain to be a voyeur of that scene, somebody who's watching that scene. Maybe I'm the villain of the piece. So like when I write something, first it's very flow of stream of consciousness, very much me watching the scene play out. And then when I go back, it can change really dramatically because I'm like, oh wait, the interesting bit about this isn't this. This isn't where the character should go. This is an interesting scene, and it's important to the whole narrative, and it's setting things in motion that play out all the way through the story. But it's not that character. That character doesn't live there, you know. Or even like, like the 3-act. It's because I'm what I'm writing, so it's in my head at the moment. But like the 3 main characters, I specifically wanted to set up the tropes of like the stubborn character, the silver tongue, you know, trickster, and then the heavy, you know, like that's the fantasy trope of like the 3 people. And I wanted that so that I could play with it. But it just means that like, yeah, you kind of have a character and you give them lines and you go, that's not them, is it? And somebody else is that character. And when you write it with their voice, back to voices, you write it with their voice, you write it and then you go, they wouldn't say that though, would they? And you just said it. You said it because you want the reader to read that, but that character wouldn't say that. So you now got to like redraft the whole scene to make sense, so that you get across to the reader what you want to get across, but don't sacrifice character integrity. Sorry, I was a bit. I kind of came back on myself there a little bit. Yeah, but I think back to your original question, I don't know how I write those characters if they're not my voice, but I think it's just because I don't think I've, besides Noel, and I think it's a really weird thing because with British Winters, I've had people think that I am Noel, and I've been offended by that because he's not a great character. He's a dick and he does dick things, and I'm like, I'm not a dick, am I? I try to be nice. I'm pleasant. There's a bit where he buys everyone cheap beers. I never do that. I always buy people the order they want. But I think that in a lot of ways, because I try to work out that, and I'm like, one, there are parallels with the character where there are like, that one thing I did was the family structure. The characters are very different. So his brother's very different from my brother. His mother's very different from my mother. But the family structure is the same. So he has a brother, he has a stepdad, he has a stepsister. So those things, I have those. Had those. So those things are similar. So I think some people, if they know me, latch on to, well, that's your mum, and that's your stepdad, and blah, blah, blah. But none of those characters, like the interaction he has with his stepdad is not the interaction I have with my stepdad. And I'm like, okay, that's true. Some of, you know, Noel's mannerisms and negativities, maybe I've got those a little bit. But I guess in some respects, with British Winters, the little backstory on the British Winters is that when I started writing it as a script, when I was in university, with the idea of, I'm finished university. Of course, I'll make a film within 2 days of like finishing university. So I started writing the script, and then I left university and was not around film people. And so all of a sudden the chances of making a film became even more and more unlikely. And instead of sitting on my hands, I had an opportunity where I did a job where I could type, because I was doing IT stuff for people, for the community. It was during the winter. No one came in because the place was freezing. So at least 4 hours a week, I got to sit in a room with a PC and no one about me. So I started writing British Winters. And before that point, I tried to write a few different books. It wasn't the first book I tried to write. I tried to write science fiction. There was another drama I started writing. And the one thing that always got in my way was this obsession of reading books of like, this is how you write. These are the rules. This is, write your Bible of what your world is, write your 3-act structure, and all of these rules that were just swimming around my head. And with the first time with British Winters, I was like, oh, sod all that. I'm just going to write it. and not care about any of that stuff. I'm just going to let it come out, and I'm going to let it be messy, let it be what I want it to be, let the characters want it to be, not overanalyze an audience. Who is this for? Who am I marketing to this to? It's just a story to tell a story. And I think because of that, Noel kind of became my id a little bit, where that's probably why he is a dick, is because it's like, what would I want to do in this scenario? What would I do in this scenario? And what would be the worst thing I could do in this scenario? Like, what's the bad thing to do? Because I think we all know how to be good human beings and be polite. And I like being polite. I like being nice. I think I think if I'm in a bad mood, if someone's put me in a bad mood, even if I don't want to be in a bad mood. And I think negativity puts you in a bad mood. So I like doing that. But I think we all have demons. We all have, I'd like to say that to you right now, blah, blah, moments. But on average, we don't do that. And then through British Winters, I could kind of go, well, maybe he can say all those things. maybe what would my life be if I didn't do that? And his life is like Noel in the book. He's got a girlfriend, but he lives in a flat by himself. He's very isolated. When I was writing this, I'd been married for 6-7 years or something. Maybe I'd married about 10 years at the point when I wrote this book. So again, it was a little bit like, well, maybe if I didn't get married. There was flats that I'd looked at before I met my wife that I was like, I might move into that in real. I'm like, well, what if I lived in that flat? And what would that life be? So I think that maybe of the things I've written, Noel is close to me in the sense that he is my evil side. Like, no, it's not evil because he's not an evil person. He's just a bit of a dick is what he is. But he's depressed. He's a depressed dick. So he's a little bit of that. And he maybe is a little bit of my, well, what would have happened if I didn't meet my wife, and where would my life gone? Would I have just stayed working in bars?
Okay, this is a Patreon video about automatic drawing. So if you join my Patreon, you will see this video and many others like it. That's what I'm showing you on the screen now. Is a video that I made about a drawing process called automatic drawing. It explains how and why this is a useful way to make art. There are lots of different ways of making art and using different tools, different thought processes, and expressing your ideas, and this is one of them. You can join now for $2 a month and start using these techniques. It's not much to ask. I know that it's too much for some people, so I appreciate that it's not for everyone, but if you can afford it, it will really help this channel. You'll also be a patron of the arts, which sounds posh, and there's nothing quite as prestigious as a posh patron of the arts. So, if you are able to do that, then I really would appreciate it. There's also animation, exhibition, and behind the scenes videos. Loads to check out on the channel. I've been making it for quite a while, so I upload a video every month, and I'm going to start creating a tier system with different exclusive access videos. I hope to see you there soon. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching.
You started answering the next question I was going to ask you anyway, because I was going to say how you really liberated me by saying, because I was talking about, I saw this Matt and Trey South Park guys saying, it's got to be although and therefore, or but and therefore, instead of and then and then and then. So, this person does this, and then this person does this. Instead, this person does this, but then this happens, so this person does this. And that mechanism made sense to me. It really inspired me. But when it comes to writing, I thought, where's my but then? And you said, forget that, because a lot of the time your and then could be an although then anyway, which was great because I'd never thought of it that way. And you can kind of take away the barriers. And I'm thinking of things like Vince Gilligan putting kind of colour theory into his writing, and it being so significant for the viewers afterwards to rewatch and pick through. And he's got a new series out, which I've started watching, which I've seen videos about colour theory and that, which I never considered when I was watching it. Is that something you ever kind of go back through a script and think, now it's time to sprinkle in some intricacies that can't happen in the flow state, in that stream of consciousness?
Well, it's definitely good. Obviously, yeah, rewrites going back and things like that. I think a lot of that probably comes through experience. So obviously, Vince is like he's works in. It's weird because I remember reading an interview where it felt like Breaking Bad was like he came out of nowhere. It's like they've been working on TV for years. Yeah, it's X-Files and stuff like that. And it's like, but it really made him feel like this is a one in a million. He's wrote a script and someone was like, "This is amazing." It's like, no, he's been in the film industry. So I think that if you've, again, it depends on what your process is. If his process was like he wrote the scripts and then he directed and he saw the final and he saw the final product, you're going to get more visual about like, oh, actually, I need to write this in the scripts that like the color layout or what that how that informs to the audience about things. If you're just writing a script, you're never going to get to there because that's all you do is write scripts. So it's only the director that's going to start putting those things in. Which is what the normal process is. As a script writer, it goes to a director. A director then puts their vision. Then an editor comes in and then helps the director take that pile of footage and make it into a usable film. And so there's all those stages. If you're part of that whole process, that's going to really affect you as a writer, because you just think about like Tarantino going from like Reservoir Dogs to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That only comes because he's a writer who turns his writing into films. Like his understanding of composition and of camera moves, those are in his scripts. He's not writing script. Like the first thing if you ever go to a script workshop, like an official, like somebody who works in the craft and they're teaching you how to write a script correctly. First thing they'll do is like, you need to take this out. You need to take this out because you're saying, and the moon was to the right. The director decides that. You don't decide any of that. Write the dialogue, write the emotion, write the scene headings, and give as little information because it's the director's job to put all of that visual into it. That's kind of weird because obviously the writers we really respect put loads of effort into the script and put all of those things into it. So again, it's that thing of like rule of thumb, what they're teaching you, which is fine. They're teaching you the basics so you can break it down to its fundamental level of what script writing is. But then you need to make sure that those rules don't stick in your head forever because those rules are garbage and you want to be able to expand it. And you do need to put, your own flow to it and make it interesting. So back to your original question, I have written a film and then directed a film. So I have gone through that whole process of script to edit. I don't think...
So I'm wondering whether you imposed symbolism at any points and thought, here's an opportunity to say this will be a symbolic object, colour, interact, or theme, or kind of motif that I'm going to introduce.
I definitely think in those terms. When it comes to scripts, I don't think I've written them that way, only because all of the things I've made have been zero budget. So on average, not that budget is everything. Obviously, if you can go, oh, there's this crystal ball and it's really important in the whole film. I can get a crystal ball and put it in the film. It doesn't cost loads of money for that. But there was a guy who asked me a question when it comes to writing a book and then turning it into a film. And he was like, how did you find working with you've got these rooms and locations so ingrained in your brain, and then you now are filming in this pub. Like, did you find that pub based on your expectations, or did you have to limit what you want it to be? And I said, well, the truth is, you've kind of got to be adaptable on low budget films. You can't be like, well, this is not the pub I was an L-shaped bar in my novel. You've got to go, well, this pub's given as a pub for free, so work around that and try to bring a new vision based on what you can see. So I think because I've always made things in a very low budget way, it takes it out of you. It takes a little bit of that kind of like, it needs to be this way and perfect, because there's certain things you can control like that, but there's a lot of things you can't control. So you end up working a very in the moment. Like a lot of the films that I've done have been very we've not seen the location. We said we need a hall. Have you got a hall? We've not had a chance to do a scouting thing. We just saw it online and saw a picture of it, and then we're going in there that day, and we've got to dress it that day, work out where we're going to put the cameras that day, and so a lot of those things get taken out of your hands because you're doing it on the fly. So I think that affects my scripts. Novels, novels are very different because that you have an endless budget of whatever you want to do because it's just paper and letters, words on a page. I think I'm very. There was somebody I was looking at the other day, and I was thinking about how it's really interesting how they. James Gunn. I think it's really interesting. Is like one of his strengths is also his weaknesses. One of his strengths is really interesting is that he tends to write characters and have a way about them that seems so frivolous and unneeded, but then becomes really important at the end. Like, it's a dumb one, but like in the Superman movie, there's a super dog, and the dog likes to destroy things and grab things, a naughty dog. But at the end of the film, Superman gets to use the dog being naughty to help him save the day. He's like, destroy these cameras, and he goes and destroys the cameras because he's a naughty dog. And I was like, oh, it's really funny how clever that is really as a premise set up. It's something that's just, the dog's naughty, and then actually make it pivotal to the end of the film. And if you look at it, everything he's ever written is very much like that. Everything he writes is this secular thing of everything making sense at the end. Nothing, even the silliest thing, is frivolous at the end. I think I write very much that way in my stuff. So I do like think. I don't even know what that means. Is that like almost like an anal retentive thing where I like things to connect? Like I'm like, and it's like, or even like characters that'll come in. I'm trying to think of an example in British Winters, but like characters that come in but then come back that I didn't intend them to come back. I just kind of wrote them as this one scene. And you go, that's that, in the book, there's a homeless guy called Michael who is affectionately referred to as Hobo Joe in the story, which is a made-up name that the bar staff have come up with, but then don't even know what his real name is, so they call him by that name even though it's not his name. And it was just what I thought was funny, as I like awkward situations, I like characters being awkward situations. In my own life, I'm the kind of person that when the drunk person comes to you in the pub and tries to get in your conversation, I don't go, oh God, I go, hello, what's going on? And my friends then leave the table and I'm stuck with this random person who's drunk and is telling me about, like, I don't know, chips in medicines and stuff like that. Like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, let's talk about that. Let's find out what's going on. Because I get in those situations. But I think I put that in the book in the sense of like Noel starting a conversation, not really knowing where it's going, and that was the kind of the kernel of the idea for the homeless guy, was offering somebody food who it was a guy who comes to the pub all the time. They have no interactions, uses the bathroom to like clean himself up and go to the loo, and then leaves again, doesn't drink, doesn't eat anything, doesn't stay in the pub. And then the idea that Noel reaches out and offers him food, and this kind of conversation of like, well, why did I do it? Was it because I wanted to be a good person, or did I want them to, did I do it because I'm a good person, or did I do it because I want him to think I'm a good person? Do I want the accolades? And the homeless guy doesn't give it to him. It just kind of goes, well, it's just guilt, isn't it? That's why you were doing it. And it's this kind of like, I just like the unfolding of like, what to do, because now I'm mad. Like, you should be appreciative. I'm just giving you soup. And it's like, well, what's a soup to me? It's nothing to me, but it's massive to him. But then I want him to, and so that was the whole idea of like, I have a bit of a bag of frogs mindset where nothing is a simple answer. It's always like, yeah, but this, and then that, and then the other, and then, well, what does that mean? And like, does that make me a bad person? But I'm assuming I'm allowed to have those thoughts. And so it unravels in Noel's brain this simple act of giving someone soup. But he wasn't going to be in it again. And then towards the end of the book, I had him back in and had it play out again. And the reason why I liked it playing out again is I wanted to see where was Noel at that beginning bit, and has he learned? And it kind of devolves again and falls on its arse again. And this time he's like thinking that he's so smart and he's doing it to shove it in this homeless guy's face that he's giving. I'm still giving you the soup even though I don't need the accolade anymore. And then he's like, wait a minute, it's still not working out the way I think. And it kind of plays on that idea of like anybody who's like, I don't know, maybe you've got somebody at work who's can be a bit of an arse to you or something, and you go home, you're like, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to do this. And you walk in and you go, oh, guess I'll make you a coffee this morning. And they go, cheers. And you go, oh, damn, I don't know what to do with that. And this idea of like, you build up this mindset of like, you're in the right, you're going to do it this way. And then the person doesn't answer, because life isn't a play, life isn't a movie. People have their own autonomy and they're going to answer a certain way. And you go, oh, have you not seen the script? What you're supposed to do is this. And I kind of liked the idea of like, stories are about a character growing, and British Winters, he learns stuff, but then unlearns it, because that's what we do. We kind of go, I think I know the answers to the world, and I know I'm going to start doing this. And then the next episode is you doing the very opposite of that, because you're only in the moment do you care and want to change. And so I like the idea of this kind of parallel of that scene that's like the second chapter of the book, and then coming back to it and being, you know, letting the audience know he's still kind of a mess, and even when he's trying to do something different, he's still failing, he's still a fool. And I like that. So yeah, so I like bookends. I like mirroring scenes. I like, I get excited that in the rewrites, those things excite me, of like knowing like, oh wait, yeah, in this bit I set up this one joke and I can bring it back later on, or I can do these parallels. You know, it was interesting. Again, not to do spoilers for the book, but Noel's character has his father's an alcoholic. He has a strange relationship with him, but then throughout the book he befriends this recovering alcoholic, and I kind of liked the parallel of the idea of like, how are you befriending your dad really? Like, this person has got the same demons your dad has, he has the same regrets your dad has, but you can't forgive your dad, but you want to help this person. And there's something quite, because it's the only person really in the whole book that Noel goes out of his way to help him and look after him and be kind to him. Not that he's mean to other people, but he's kind of self-serving in a lot of the other scenes and just trying to get out of the interactions. A big kind of theme of the book is somebody isolating, not intentionally, but definitely going out of their way to have as few interactions with people that are in his life that like him, that are his friends, and then trying to avoid that thing. But then there's this one character who is a person that most people would run away from, and he feels this kind of responsibility for this person. And yeah, it's his dad. It's not his dad, but it's like, I guess it's that thing where it's like coping with your own demons through somebody else, maybe.
Like a surrogate.
Like a surrogate father figure, yeah. Oh, but maybe it's the thing where it's like, I think it's a weird thing when you have family issues, is that they can never give you what you want, because what you want is for them to not have been issues. So they can't give you that, and they can apologise, and you can kind of go, that's great, you've apologised, but all of those things that you did still affect me now, even though I now have to forgive you for what you did in the past. But a stranger that is that mould, and it's like, well, actually, you've got a problem, you're an alcoholic. If I'd have been your friend rather than your son, maybe I could have looked after you. And maybe you need looking after rather than, but you weren't my dad, you were supposed to look after me. So you've got a responsibility to look after me. So I'm mad that you had an illness. But this other person, maybe I can look after him. And that's what I want to do. I wish I could look after you because you were hurting. Maybe I'm looking into it a bit more too. But that's kind of like, so I like things like that. I think I like conflicting and contrary kind of actions that people do. But when it comes to symbolism, it's it's one of those things where maybe I do it unintentionally, do it without thought, because I do like all of that stuff. I do like, I do when I'm like, think it's, simple. Well, again, it's a weird thing, because there'll be definitely times, I'm trying to think of an example, but there'll definitely be times where I'm thinking about a color palette for a scene because of maybe emotions, like where am I setting it and what are the colors of the room. Normally, I'm probably doing like a metaphor, like if I'm talking about a character who's in a dark place, these kind of blue tones and like the idea of rooms being like ice blocks or something like that and things like that. But then sometimes it's just when he describes the this church that he goes to for these, that how he meets the alcoholic is that he accidentally goes to an AA meeting thinking it's something different. And the way I described that was I wanted to just talk about, I've worked in council buildings and how no one thinks of matching colours in those places, or anything. It's just like, what was the cheapest carpet we could buy? And like, this we put wood chip on here in 1975 and we've just painted it 1,000,000 times. So so I kind of, so sometimes it's more, I'll do like bad colour palettes for humour purposes. But I guess it's not something, I think I definitely, my focus is tone and characters. I think that it's funny. There's that whole saying of like story is king. So that's when the idea of like when you write something, when you make a film, you can make everything beautiful and you can have the best actors, but story is king. If the story isn't good, then who cares about anything else? But I say characters are king. I
was about to say the same thing because I've seen so many exceptions to that that I just think it's a great rule of thumb, but it's not always true, and I don't think it's true as often as people might assume. But I just realised as well, haven't really explicitly introduced the book to the audience. So would you be able to just introduce, if the film was released in 2016, since when have you started to adapt that into the book?
It was a book before the film.
So I remember you saying that you were writing it at the end of uni, last year of uni, was it?
Yeah. So
that's where it's germinated from.
Yeah. So we did the film in 2015, releasing it in 2016, but the book was originally released like in 2012, I think. So it was just like just Amazon job, and there's another website called Wordery that I'll put it on other tablets. But what's kind of nice about Amazon is that they do a paper copy as well, so you can kind of, I don't mind, I'll read stuff on a tablet, but it's always nice to have paper in your hands and it feels like you're reading a book. So I released it then. It was so the concept was with all of my stories, they start in really simple places, and then something happens in the writing process that I get interested in something else. So the two things that started the idea was that I loved the idea. I was really into Wes Anderson. It was like early Wes Anderson. So it was like Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. And I liked his, even though I like Grand Budapest and stuff like that, but I kind of liked Rushmore the most because I think it was his style, but it wasn't too fantastical. Like everything else, but once he did Royal Tenenbaums, they were not in our world anymore. They were in Wes Anderson's world, whereas Rushmore, Bottle Rocket are in our world through his lens, and I like those things. And those, Rushmore specifically, I was like, I really like the idea of writing a film that's set in the UK during wintertime, because it's an interesting time because it's very blue and cold, and there's cobwebs on the trees, and they glisten in the morning. But the outfits you wear are these, normally people wear these kind of bright, big woolly jumpers and puffer jackets, and it's like, it's kind of nice to have this kind of weird juxtaposition of a grey time of the year, but like colourful clothes, and I thought that was really interesting. So that was the initial idea of just a film, British film, wintertime. What is that film? Then being like a bit wanky, I kind of was like, let's talk about corporate Christmas time. Let's talk about, it's about Jesus, but we like to buy presents. It was all really annoying and shit. That was my in, was that. And then I just came up with this Christmas play. I was definitely in the thralls of my newly found atheism, and then was like reading all like Hitchens and all of those things. It was like, yeah, what are you talking about, Bible? So there's a lot of that, which is, I feel a bit embarrassed. It's not in the book really. There's a couple of comments. I'm still an atheist, but I'm not a militant atheist now. I think that people should be allowed to have whatever religion they want, and it's kind of low-hanging fruit to beat up on people who have faith, and God love them for having faith. It's beautiful. But at that time, I was definitely in the thralls of like, you're trying to control my life, and in no way is anyone trying to control my life. Oh, you think that gay people are bad? Wait a minute, I've never seen that in real life. I've never seen a religious person have a go at a gay. I know it happens, and it's a problem, but I've never seen it. But I'm angry about it as if it's happening to my gay friends all the time, and it's not happening. But yeah, so I was in the thralls of that, and so I had this idea of like, I thought there was something interesting about religion's fine. But it is interesting if you live in a country that is kind of like has a lot of Christian roots, and yet we have a lot of people in the country that are not religious, and people who are Muslim, and people who are Hindu, and yet Christmas time, even though it isn't really about that anymore. I mean, we have a tree in the house, and that has nothing to do with Christianity at all. 90% of it isn't about, the gift giving. Oh, well, it's because of the three wise men. It's like, oh, really? Well, we're getting more than 3 gifts, aren't we? Most of it's from like pagan stuff, but a lot of the songs are religious, and Christmas plays. Like, it's very traditional in a school to have, the nativity. I have no problem with that, but I think it's interesting, the idea of like, most people in that school probably aren't religious, but we do this thing. I don't think it matters too much because it is. I don't think people are watching it. I don't think that the kids are watching it going, oh, I'm now going to bang through the Bible after I've watched this donkey talking. But maybe I was interested, so I started writing this idea of like, what if a child wrote a play that was for everybody? So it was talking about Christmas, and it made me start thinking of, because even though I can be negative and not negative. I'm not a negative person, but I can be pessimistic about people's why people do stuff, people's judgment, and things like that. I can be quite pessimistic about those things. But I think in my heart, I'm an optimist, and so I was thinking, okay, well, what if a child was to look at the world, look at a Christmas play, and instead of looking at things in a negative way, oh, Santa's not really Santa, it's just some bloke in a suit, and go, well, actually, isn't that actually more beautiful? The idea that someone's willing to put on this, and they'll go to like orphanages and give out gifts to kids who've not got parents, and it's a guy in a suit, and they get to see Santa, and that's beautiful, isn't it? Like, doing a snow angel in the snow, does that matter that it's an angel? No, it's just a cool thing to do in the snow. And so this idea of like a child's idea of looking at those things, that even if there isn't a God, Christmas still can be beautiful, and it's still a time for families to come together and for friends to come together, and that. And so that was the idea of the play. And based off of that, I came up with this character of Noel, and then that was it. I was off to the races because I didn't care about all the corporate side of Christmas. There's lots of Christmas stuff in it. It definitely is. It is definitely a book that's hamstringed by being a seasonal book, because a part of me goes, how do I sell this book? It's a book about Christmas. That's not a happy Christmas book. How do I sell this? It's like, at a time when you don't want to be depressed, read this really depressing book about Christmas. So it isn't about. So there is Christmas stuff. There's a Christmas Day. There's New Year's Eve. Those things happen. But I wasn't interested in all of those things. What I was interested in is this character is pulling away from his family. He's very depressed. The juxtaposition in the first chapter is a wide-eyed 9-year-old who, even when she sees things that don't make sense in the world, sees them through a lens of like how they can be happier and how they can be better, and we should love each other, with her brother who loves her and sees the light of the world through this character, but is very sad, very depressed, pulling away. And I loved that juxtaposition, and that's kind of was the whole catalyst. And then all of the stuff that I originally wrote, even the colourful jumpers, and they'll all disappeared because none of that mattered anymore. all that mattered is I wanted to go through this journey of this character. That's funny. I wanted, I'll say that it's a depressing book. It's depressing because it deals with depression in a very truthful way. I find sometimes depression is like really depicted in this kind of either super bleak way where there's no humor, and that's not true. Anybody who's a manic depressive will tell you that these moments of massive levity, and you'll find levity in the darkest stuff because you're in a dark place. You've kind of like, I think if you don't laugh, you'll cry. There's definitely a mannerism in me where it's like, the world is full of horrors. Probably need to find some humor in there, else it's just dark and depressing. There's beautiful stuff as well. Let's find the beauty in the world. And so there's a lot of humor in it. It's a character who is not, he has no agency. So it's about the idea of like, a character with no agency trying to withdraw from society, but at a time at Christmas where people, your family wants to see you, your friends want to go out for drinks, and a manner of things that kind of make you have to be social at a time when you don't want to be social. And I just found that really interesting. I found that really interesting of like being able to see the world through that character's eyes. I think two things are bad. I think people being unsympathetic to people with mental health issues is very bad. But I think people coddling people with mental health issues is very bad. Absolutely. I think you can kill people with kindness doesn't mean that, but I think that too much kindness stagnates somebody and has them in arrested development where they can't learn. You're not being depressed and having mental health issues, like say, struggle with it my entire life, always struggle with depression, have very, very dark moments, but being coddled by my friends or being coddled by my family doesn't help me. It just means that I'm probably going to be even more. I think my family was probably a little bit too hands off, and I could have probably done with a little bit more support. But their lack of support on that when I was younger meant that I had to cope with it, which means that I've got some bad coping mechanisms and some good ones, but it means that I can function. Whereas I think that if I'd have been coddled too much, and it sounds very, very Clarkson, and I don't want to come across like Clarkson because he's a twat. But like, and again, I'm not. You need to give comfort, you need to give love, you need to give compassion to people. Being clinically depressed is not having a bad day. Clinic depression is full chemical destruction, and you go into a hole where you cannot see your way out. It's very, very, very hard to. It's not just someone being a baby or kicking off. It's something very, very real. But if you give nothing but compassion and don't help people with agency, all you're doing is making them vulnerable forever.
Can we go back to the book briefly?
Yes.
Because I wanted to say, if it started being written in 2012, or it was written to a certain extent in 2012, this is now a completed revisiting of the story post the phenomenon.
So I'm dyslexic, and when I first finished it, I got a few people to read it to check for any kind of spelling mistakes or anything like that. I paid for someone, a professional, to proofread it and stuff. And then during lockdown, I decided I was going to do an audiobook. So I started trying to look at it, and I came across a mistake in it. I was like, oh, they've missed this mistake. Like, it wasn't a spelling mistake. It was literally a don't or a do. And it said do instead of don't. And I'm like, that's a big mistake. That's saying the opposite of what I wanted to say. And I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. And I always think sometimes, my first thought was like, I think the person who proofread this has mistaken dyslexia for being illiterate. I'm not illiterate, I have dyslexia, so I can still see when there's mistakes. So I was like, okay, I need to reproof this stuff. And luckily, since when I first wrote it, there are great tools. So I started doing the kind of like text to voice, so I could hear it. So if there was anything that wasn't the way I wanted it to be, I could hear it. Because that's the biggest problem for me with dyslexia, is that I know what it's supposed to say, so I might read it how it's supposed to be written, but there might be a letter, a word missing, or there might be an S. S's are a big thing. I drop S's a lot when I'm writing, which is a big annoying thing. So I've got to constantly reread. You know, like writing a book when you're dyslexic is a real task, because like I say, I'm not illiterate. I can spell, I can read, but it's just you miss things, and when you reread it, you miss them again. So being having the text to speech was quite handy, because I could hear, and you hear it when it's missing. Like, oh wait, that doesn't sound right. Something missing. So I started using that, and then there was bits where I was like, oh, I'm gonna add to it. I'm gonna change some things. Started going. It was a bit naughty. You shouldn't do that. It's published. It's finished. I shouldn't start editing it. But I started adding things. There was a lot of time from 2012 till now of rereading it for the first time, since I read it when I was converting it from a novel into a script for the film. Haven't read it since then. I'm even reading that. I wasn't reading it like page by page. I was like just reminding myself of dialogue and reminding myself of order, because obviously I know the book. I could, without reading it, I could tell you every chapter and tell you what happens in each chapter without looking at any page, because it's in my head. But I hadn't gone through it painstakingly, listening to every line, seeing if there's any things that don't go on. And 90% of it is exactly the same as the original book. But there's a couple of key things that I changed in the book, which I won't go into too much detail. But there was things that I was like, where I think that I was dealing with a delicate situation, and in hindsight was like, actually, this probably needs to be handled a little bit more carefully than because the main character is a dick and can be a dick. Sometimes that can make the writing, and the last thing you want when you write stuff is for people to forget that you're writing from a character's point of view and not from a political point of view. You're writing from a character saying something, not you going, this is the right thing, I believe in this. Which, especially when it's a book written with the narrator being the main character, you can't, if you've got a narrator who's not the main character, you can kind of go, not that you would write it like this because it's terrible writing, but you can have the narrator being like, and what a dick he is for thinking this way. You can have the narrator reassure the writers that you're not in any way endorsing a certain way to be, but you can't do that with a narrator. Noel is very referential and has a cute awareness of when he's being an idiot, and he will point it out and kind of come out, so that's lucky in a lot of ways. But yeah, so there's just things like that I rewrote. But yes, it's like I say, it's the same book, the same tone. I'm really curious of I've got a couple of friends who read it digitally, but in the re-release have bought the paperback, available on Amazon. I bought the paperback, and I'm really curious of what their feedback will be, of what they think of the changes, because I think it's just a kind of a privilege to be able to go back and kind of I think when you're trying to get something released, you can go over it and go over it and go over it, but there's nothing better than just resting your eyes. It's the same thing as a person who does film editing. The amount of times that you just you're working till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to get an edit finished, and you can't square the circle, and then you just go to bed, and the next day you wake up and you see it all. And all it was that your brain was just too full of the information. So having the distance from it and then being able to go back to it was really, really lovely. And like I say, I know it's probably a cardinal sin to go back and mess around with your...
George Lucas, is it? You've not gone in and added loads of CGI into the film.
Oh no, that's mainly what it is. It's mainly CGI that I've added back into it, and made all of the animals comical rather than realistic. They're all making weird noises, and the cat's got a musical number now in it and stuff like that. No, I've not George Lucas it. I've just added more context to certain things, and added some more things. There's definitely things that are quite funny that I've put into it that weren't there before, but just back to that, asking the question of why is this, and because of it you end up writing a whole new paragraph of something that you're like, oh, That's brilliant. I would have never written that, but having to ask that question or having to change that one thing does ask a question. And that, a lot of my writing is that. A lot of my writing is like, when you write stream of consciousness, when you write in a voyeuristic way, you're constantly asking questions all the time, which is useful for me because I'm always asking questions. So it's good that that's the way I write, but it's like constantly like, what does that mean? Like, why is that person doing that? Like, does it, and also, I think you're naturally, especially at anybody our age or anybody younger, you're so constantly bombarded by TVs and movie, and it colors the way you look at the world. And it can colour the way you write. So I think sometimes people will write, you'll write in an easy way of like, in stereotypes, or you'll write in, the 3-act structure and stuff like that. But being able to, always question that, like why, like the idea of like never wanting to make a character just bad. Like there's one character in the book that just does an act of violence, but to be fair, they're only in one tiny moment and then they're gone. So I haven't really got time to like, if you followed that person, they wouldn't be a terrible person, but within the context, you think they're just a terrible person. But everybody else, I try to kind of like make them three-dimensional because it isn't, it's a weird thing. I think there's a negative, I love film and I love art house movies and I love popcorn movies for being popcorn movies. But I think that I think there has been a weird thing on the populace where they now view the world through this movie lens of like, there are bad people and there are good people, and it's like, no, they're not. No one's like, the characters in movies are written to be entertaining. They're written in a way for you to be able to follow the plot. They're written in a way to give you an emotion. That's the way they're written. Humans aren't written that way. So why are you assuming one bad act? I mean, it was like we were talking earlier. We were talking about like social media and the idea that people get these pops where they've done something bad or done something like on video, and then it becomes a meme, and then their entire life is defined by that. Like, their circle of friends might be like 40 people who know they're not this person, but then millions of people say they are that person, and you go, that's bonkers. It's one event. Like, how can you be defined by one event? So again, not to be too rambly, I hope that's what I try to do with my characters. I don't want anyone to feel like they're just this, they're just that.
Two-dimensional.
Two-dimensional. Yeah. I want you to feel like when they leave, they go and have their own lives. Yeah, I
think a snapshot of anyone's life will be unsympathetic to some extent. So it's absolutely true. I've seen the film. I think it was a brilliant film. I really recommend everyone check it out. And I'm excited that you've written the book to amend certain things that you've found now the opportunity to elaborate on or to kind of fix in whatever way you think is more justified. And I think it'd be lovely to be able to read it. I'm hoping to be able to read it myself. But for this episode, I'd really like people to know, where would you like them to go to purchase the book and to support you? At
the moment, I used to have it on other digital platforms like Wordery, but at the moment I'm in, like, if you do stuff on Kindle and Amazon Prime, if you do things through Kindle Direct Publishing, you have an option to link into where you can be, if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can read this book because it's part of the Kindle. But if you do it, you're locked into the Amazon world and can't go anywhere else. So currently it's available on Amazon via Kindle or paperback or hardback. Though I've not seen the hardback version, so I'm kind of curious of what a Amazon hardback looks like. But yeah, that's where you can find it. Please, if you have read it already, leave a review, get the word out there. I'm really I am not a big social media person, but I'm trying to do social media pushes at the moment. And I'm trying to encourage anybody, if you've read it, if you've got a paperback version, please take a picture of it out in the wild. You reading it, a picture of yourself reading it, picture with a book, take a picture of it. If you go on holiday, have a picture of it on the beach, have a picture of wherever you go.
Sun lounger or whatever.
Sun lounger, yeah. It's out there, and just hashtag it British Winters. Just to kind of, to get it out there. That's the main thing. It's a difficult. The one thing I will say is I'm writing a fantasy at the moment, and just for people who, I guess, it's just for people who are writing books. It's a weird thing that you don't really think about, and I don't think you should think about this when you're writing. I think whatever makes you write, do that, because it is a difficult thing, and you've kind of got to get into a mindset of like, even if you're not in the mood, write a couple of pages, because once you start writing, you'll find if you are a writer, on average, if you're a creative person who is going to end up finishing a script or a novel, once you start writing, your brain's going to start filling with the endorphins of excitement of writing stuff. So just do it no matter what mood you're in, and don't plan your book based on how you're going to sell it. You shouldn't care. I don't care how many copies I sell. I don't care who reads it. What I do care about is the reason why I'm doing all of this, the reason why I'm doing this social media, is I want the people that will enjoy it to find it, to be able to find it. And that's a difficult thing, because it is just a sea of books, a sea of people. Not everyone reads these days. I think a lot of people that would enjoy it are probably not big book readers. So trying to find them to be like, you will actually really enjoy this book. But it's a satirical black comedy. That is a very hard thing to pitch, because there isn't a lot of people who write those things, who do independent film, do like self-publishing. So that's been the hardest thing, is trying to get out there. If you write a fantasy, if you write a horror, if you write a science fiction, there is markets for those things, so you can get into them a little bit easier. Still difficult, because you're still one voice in a sea of voices who are all trying to get the energy for you. Read my book. So it is difficult. So I think maybe thinking about that, like when you write something, when you finished it, what is your audience? Do a bit of research on where you can get it. Look up some people like Simon who do podcasts, who can help kind of get the word out there. But the main thing is, one, write it for yourself, so that you know that you're doing it for the right. You know that you when you finished it, the win is that you finished it. I've now finished a book. It's in my hand. No matter what happens from now on, I'll die, this will go to a charity shop, someone will come across it, that fills me with great joy. But then, don't care about the views, don't care about the purchases, be glad that you've done it. Try to get it out there. Again, my main thing is, I love story. So many stories I've read have helped me and have given me joy. And I've written something, and I'm not saying it's the best book in the world, because I'm not that kind of person. It is the best book in the world. You know, it's Trump's book, then the Bible, then this book. Art of the Deal, Bible, Quran, Torah, British Winters. You've got those.
Bhagavad Gita, you don't get a look at it. But I forgot, I've lost so much train of thought. But I know that there is a market for it. I know it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think the people who, I'm really proud of it, and I think the people who do find it will really enjoy it. Especially if you're a person who does suffer with mental health, I believe that you'll believe that this is a true, that this is the best representation of it. Not best as in like it's a good representation of mental health, but it's an honest and accurate portrayal of mental health. It's not whitewashing anything, it's not rose tinted, and it's not super dark all the time. But yeah, and it's funny. Yeah. It's a funny book. Yeah. Lastly, where online would you like people to go for social media to see what you're doing and support you?
I'm trying to get more active on social media. The best place to look at all things British Winters and anything I write would be to follow me on all the socials I do, or whatever your favourite social is. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Threads. I'm on all of them, BlueSky, and it's all under Nowhere Winters. Which is, it's a weird title. The reason why it's Nowhere Winters, which is kind of redundant now, is when I wrote British Winters, I was writing another story that was called Nowhere Story. And so it's Nowhere Winters is how I got the title, but I never finished Nowhere Story. Right. It's still in process, but yeah.
That's the law. Excellent. Well, brilliant talking to you as always. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, man. Always a great chat.
Cheers.